Hey, my crafting friends, I have 6 last minute primitive Christmas and winter DIYs that I know you're going to love, so come craft with me. I'm Sarah and welcome to my channel, Primroselaneprims. If you haven't done so already, I hope you'll consider hitting that subscribe button and crafting with me in the future. And now let's get right into these primitive DIYs. For this first DIY, I'm going to be using this canvas drop cloth. This is just a painter's drop cloth that you can get in any hardware store or Amazon. You can even find them. But I'm just going to take and I'm just going to double this over here and cut off a section. I'm going to be using this drop cloth to make little primitive reindeer ornies or bowl fillers, day bowl fillers. So I'm just going to, without a pattern, I'm just going to take and cut a triangle out of my fabric. And the top of this, the widest part, is approximately around 5 inches wide. And these measure about 7 inches in length from top to bottom. Now to put these together, I'm just going to use some hot glue. If you're somebody who sews, you absolutely could do that too. But I'm just going to add my hot glue right down the sides here and press my fabric together firmly. And I'm going to do that all the way down the sides, but I'm going to leave the top open so we can add a little bit of stuffing. Now to stuff mine, I'm just going to be using some of these plastic shopping bags. I always have a ton of these laying around and it's a great way to repurpose them. So for these, it's not like they're pillows that you're going to be laying on. So adding the plastic in is a great filler for these, but you could also just use some old pillow stuffing or some polyfill fiber, whatever you prefer or have on hand. And I'm just going to slightly stuff these to the top and then add some hot glue right across the top to seal them up once I get it stuffed to my liking. Now for the antlers of our little reindeer, I was originally going to use sticks from my yard, but we got a snowstorm and about 10 inches of snow dropped on us. So every stick in my yard is buried pretty deep in snow, and I didn't feel like going out and clomping to try to find any. So I had a grapevine wreath that had a couple pieces of grapevine that were kind of sticking out, broken off, and I just kind of trimmed this off of there and thought, I'll just make my own antlers out of this grapevine. So that's exactly what I'm doing here. I'm just going to cut this grapevine with my little wire cutters here, and I'm going to just start piecing together little antlers for our little reindeer. They say necessity is the mother of invention, and even though I had originally planned on just using sticks, which I think would also be really cute, I ended up loving how this grapevine antlers turned out, especially on the ones where I left the little grapevine tendrils sticking out. It just added a little extra element, a little extra to these, and it ended up turning out better than I had expected. I love it when projects work out like that. So I'm making 2 sets of antlers here because I'm making 2 right now. So that's what I'm doing, putting together 2 here. Now, once I'm done with my antlers, I'm just going to take and add them right down into the top of my little canvas reindeer here. And you can kind of get an idea what this is going to look like. So with one set of the antlers, I left the little grapevine tendrils, and the other ones I didn't. And I really like how they both turned out. I think either way, you can't go wrong. But I really like the ones with the tendrils. So I'm just going to add my little antlers down into my canvas, and using hot glue, I'm going to go through and just hot glue this top together, add a little bit of underneath of the little antlers as well to make sure those are nice and secure in there. And you can really start to get an idea of what these little guys are going to look like. Now for the eyes, I'm just going to use a couple black buttons. I just pulled a couple out of my little pack of buttons that I get from the Dollar Tree here, and I'm just going to hot glue these right here on the face of my little reindeer. And for the nose, I'm just going to take one of these little rusty jingle bells. I'm just going to borrow this off this little pick that I'd had that I've kind of been pulling bells off of for a while. And I'm going to hot glue these right down here, right in the tip of our triangle here for our little reindeer nose. You can also get these rusty bells off of Amazon or Factory Direct. Now, if you don't want your little clacker that's inside the bell to get hot glued so it'll continue to jingle, kind of turn your little guy upside down so that you hot glue it down. That way it doesn't get stuck in the hot glue. Does that make sense? Next, I'm going to go in with my Waverly Antique Wax here, and I'm just going to dry brush a little bit this right over the top of our reindeer, because if you look at reindeer are kind of two-tone. They have like this light, almost the color of this drop cloth, but they also have brown on them as well. And since these are primitive too, I just wanted to go out and add just a little bit of this antique wax to just give them a little bit of the brown color to them as well. If you prefer them without it, you could just leave them, because I think they look cute either way, honestly. But I'm going to go and I'm going to add this to both the front and the back. Next, I'm going to take my little paper tags here that I get off of Amazon, and I'm going to give our little reindeer name. So for the first one, I'm going to put, this is Dasher, and for the other, I think I'm going to do Comet, Dasher and Comet. And now that I think about it, actually doing an entire set of these with all of Santa's reindeer would be really, really cute. And you could even use a red bell on one for Rudolph, perhaps. But making a set of ornaments like this to go on a tree, I think would actually be really, really cute. So once I get my names wrote on my little reindeer, I'm just going to take and give these a good scrunching up, because I want to age these tags. I want to give them that aged, antiqued, primitive look. And we're going to start off by just giving these a nice, good crumpling. Once they're nice and crumpled to my liking, I'm going to go in with my Waverly Antique Wax again, and I'm just going to start around the edges, making it a little darker just to distress these tags, give it that aged paper look, and then go into the center just lighter to, like I said, give it that nice aged antiqued look. If you have distressing ink, you prefer to use that, then absolutely go for it. I like to use my Waverly Antique Wax, kind of a one-stop shop. It saves on having to buy extra craft supplies. Now I'm going to go in next in with my thin jute twine here, and I'm just going to tie a simple little shoestring bow here. Because with reindeer, I learned that if they have antlers, in the winter at Christmas time, they are female because the males shed their antlers in the winters. So all of Santa's reindeer are female. So I'm just going to add a little bow right here to the top of my tag. It's going to hide that little hole that's in my tag. So I'll glue the bow to the tag right there and then hot glue the tag right below our little reindeer's antler. If you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to drop down and give this video a like. Also, if you haven't done so, I hope you'll consider hitting that subscribe button so that you can craft with me again in the future. I would absolutely love to have you join me again. The last thing I'm going to do on these is add an option to hang. And I'm just going to take my little embroidery needle here and some embroidery floss. This is just a dark brown one that I had in my stash. And I'm just going to put it right through the back and tie it off in a little loop. So that way, if I want to hang my little reindeer as like an ornament, I can. Or I can tuck it down and put it in, say, a dough bowl. You could even use these to embellish a wreath. Like I have one here stuck on a wreath, which actually looks really cute as well. So many different ways to use these cute little guys. For this next DIY, I'm going to be using these 1-gallon paint stir sticks. And these come in a pack of 10. They're only under a couple dollars for one of these packs at your hardware store like at Lowe's. And I'm going to just use 2 out of this pack. And I'm going to be using these. We're going to make a pair of little wooden skis. So I'm going to take right here at the top where the handle is. And I'm just going to take my Sharpie marker and just kind of mark how I would this to kind of come to a point, kind of like the top of a skis would. And I'm just going to kind of do this freehand the best I can here. So now these paint stir sticks are really thin wood. So I'm just taking my wire cutters here, and the wire cutters will go right through these paint stir sticks just to slowly trim off this wood and to the shape I want it. I suppose if you wanted to break out like the jigsaw, you absolutely could, or if you have another tool in your craft stash that would work just as well, you could do that as well. But like I said, I just had my wire cutters right here beside me and they go right through this thin wood, so hey, why not? Now, once I get those trimmed down, I'm just going to go in with a piece of sandpaper, and I just want to go over these rough edges and to make sure the tips of my skis aren't too sharp. We don't want anybody to get poked or hurt on them. So just sand those down so that they're not dangerous. We don't want to make a homemade shiv or something like that. So just give this a little sand. Then I want to go in with some red paint. I'm taking Waverly's chalk paint in the color Crimson, and I'm just going to give these one coat of this. You could actually paint these whatever color you wanted to. You could do white, so many different options, whatever would fit your decor, but I wanted to do an old set of maybe red skis here. So after I got my one coat on and they've dried, I'm going to go in with my sandpaper and I'm going to go and distress these a little bit. I'm going to go all around all of my edges and sand down so a little bit of that wood is showing on, like I said, focusing on the edges, but I'm also going to go all in the center as well. The sandpaper also helps dull down that red a little bit because this crimson is a really bright red. And I'm going to do it to both the front and the back of my little skis. Then I'm going to go in with my Waverly Antique Wax once again, and I'm going to just go over these lightly and use this as kind of a stain. This antique wax is just going to it's going to dull down that red a little more. It's going to give it more of that antique look, and all of the natural wood that's showing through where I sanded, it's going to give it that pretty antique wax color, just to give these a pretty distressing. And I'm just going to use my paper towel here just to wipe off some of the excess. I don't want too much antique wax. I just want it to be more like a stain over top. See how pretty? It just gives that red, it dulls it down and just, it really makes it a really pretty color. I'm not sure the camera really does it justice. So once these are dry, I'm going to take, and I want to kind of crisscross my skis, kind of like if you're in a ski lodge and you kind of propped your skis up maybe against the side to, you know, as you went inside, and they kind of like crossed over, just kind of casual like, but that's what I was going for here. And I'm just going to use some hot glue to attach them together, wipe off my excess there that kind of leaked out, so that way if they're standing up, it just looks like a couple of skis propped up. Next, I'm going to go in with this garland. This is just one of these $4 and some change garlands from Walmart, and I'm going to just pull open the wire here, pull out a couple little pieces of the pine, and I'm going to cross them over and just kind of give them a twist. So I'm kind of making like a large X with my pine. And I'm going to hot glue it right here in the center of my little skis. Next, I'm going to go in with this black and cream gingham homespun fabric. I have this ripped. It's about approximately a 1-inch size strip, but I'm just going to take my fabric here and I'm going to just tie it right in the center. Next, I'm going to take this little rusty star. You can find these on Amazon or Factory Direct. And I'm just going to hot glue this little star right over top of the knot where I tied my fabric. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go in with one of these little paper tags again. And I'm just going to write, "Let it snow." Because we're skiing and we need snow. So let it snow. And just like I did with the reindeer tags, I want to make these look aged. So I'm just going to go ahead and crumple them and once again take my antique wax to just make that paper look nice and aged and worn. I'm going to add a little hot glue to both the front and back of my little tag, and I'm just going to tuck it right under the corner of my star right here on the side. And that's it. These turn out so adorable. Like I said, you could do these in different colors and they would look adorable sitting on a shelf, a tiered tray, up on your mantle. A quick, fun, easy project, and one you could even leave out all winter long. For this next DIY, we're going to be making another little ornament or table filler, except this time I want to do a little primitive tree. So I'm just taking on a piece of cardstock here and I'm just going to kind of draw out a little pattern of a tree and cut it out. Now you could make these as big or as small as you wanted to, and I'm just kind of doing a really thin tree. I was kind of going for like the little pencil primitive tree look, but I'm going to trace that onto my canvas drop cloth that's doubled over. And I'm going to I'm going to switch these over here so that way any of my Sharpie that was still showing through is on the inside, and you won't see that on the front of my little ornament. And then using hot glue, I'm going to go through and start going right along the edges and attaching the two pieces together. I'm going to kind of go along here and kind of rough these edges up a little bit. So I want my edges to have just a little bit of fringe hanging over. And I've left, as you can see, this bottom open here because I want to once again add a little bit of stuffing down in my little tree here. And I'm just going in once again with my plastic bags. You could also use stuffing, pillow stuffing, or polyfill. And I'm going to push this down in, and you probably need something to help poke it down, make sure it gets down in those tips, corners, and edges of your little tree so that it's nice and filled out. Once you have your little ornament stuffed, just take a little bit of hot glue right down at the bottom and just finish sealing it shut. I had to push a little bit of my stuffing there was trying to pop out. I had to push it back down in there so that I could properly seal it up. Now I wanted to make my tree green, so I'm going in. I have this little, it's a sample from Valspar. I just got it at Lowe's, and I think this is called Poker Green is the color that I have this paint in. And I'm just going to go over, and I was originally just going to kind of lightly dry brush it, but I wasn't really a big fan of how that was turning out. It just, I just didn't like it. So I went over the front and back first lightly, but then I'm going to go back over it and make my green a little more solid. Put it on a little thicker coat so that my tree is more of a solid green instead of that two-tony that it was turning out. Just didn't like that. Yeah, sometimes things just don't quite work out in your mind like you thought they would. But that's okay, because I like how this turned out in the end. Going right back over it, just adding extra paint, this drop cloth that holds paint really well. They're great for that. So once I've got my green on, I'm going to go in with my Waverly Antique Wax, and I'm just going to lightly go over this because the antiquing wax kind of dulls that green just a little bit, gives it a little more of that vintage look that I'm going for. Now for the top of my little tree, I'm going to add this small little rusty star right to the top. And this is one of the little rusty stars that has the hole in the top. So when I place this on the top, I'm placing the side with the hole on the very top, and I'll use that to add a little hanger. Now I wanted to add some little ornaments to my tree. So I took my little pack of beads that I get off of Amazon that has multi-size beads in it, and I took these little small ones, and they would look pretty just in the natural wood, and I almost left them that, but then I decided to go in with my red paint and just to give these a really quick little coat of the red. And these little tiny beads, as you can see, they paint so easy. You just take your brush, kind of rub it over them, and boom, they're done. And And then just to dull that red down, give it a little more aged look, I just went right back over those with that antique wax too, just to give that red that pretty aged look. They wanted to stick in my paintbrush. They're so small. Now to add these, I had to grab my little tweezers so that way I would not burn my fingertips, because with these smaller beads, I would have absolutely glued my fingers as well. So just grabbing a pair of tweezers, I just held them and hot glued them right onto my little tree, and then just used the tweezers to pull off any extra hot glue that if any of it kind of seeped out the side. Just use the tweezers to kind of wipe that away. And that bead right there, it absolutely just pulled an escape act on me and shot off. I had to go repaint another one because I could not find where that little guy flew off to. He just slipped right into my tweezers. I'll probably find it in the spring when I'm like cleaning up my craft room, spring cleaning my craft room. So here at the top, I'm just going to take a little piece of wire, add it to that little hole that I said was in the top of the star, twist it around and just make a little hanger. This just gives me the option, if I want to hang it on something, I can, or I can just tuck it right down behind the star and the back too, if I want to use it as, say, a dough bowl filler or to pop on a tiered tray. For this next DIY, I'm going to be using another set of paint stir sticks, but this is the big 5-gallon ones. These are the large ones, and they have the ruler on these. And we're going to use one of these to make a reindeer measuring stick, a stick to measure the snow with, I guess. But if you live in a place that doesn't have snow, you could also just use one of these to stick down and, say, an arrangement or a plant or something to decorate for the winter as well. So I'm going to take the top here and I'm just going to saw off the section of the top where the handle part is, and then I'm going to flip it over. These are a little thicker, couldn't quite use the wire cutters, had to break out the little miter box, but we got it done. And I'm just going to flip this over and hot glue it right to the top. That's going to be our little reindeer head. Now I want to go in with some Waverly antique wax because, like I said, I live in a place where we get a good bit of snow, and I thought this would be a really cute way, especially with the kids, to go out and stick in the snow to see how much we've got. So the antique wax will act more as a stain here and still allow me to see the ruler part that's underneath. And I'm just going to wipe off any of the excess here with my little rag. If you're not wanting to use it as a paint stir stick and you didn't want to use the wax, you could either use the other side as the front that doesn't have the ruler, or you could use, like, say, some burnt umber apple barrel paint. That would work too. Now for the nose of my reindeer, I'm going to use one of these large rusty jingle bells, and I'm just going to hot glue it right here to the tip of his little face. Now for his antlers, I have some of this grapevine. This is the kind you can kind of get in the rolls from Michael's or Hobby Lobby, or actually I ripped this off one of the little wreaths I had. It was kind of falling apart anyway, so I just kind of borrowed some from it. And I'm just going to make a couple small bundles here of this little grapevine, and I'm going to take my twine to tie it down really tight, wrap it around it a few times to make sure that little little bundle stays put. And I'm just going to trim these down at the bottom too, so to clean them up a little bit. And then I'm going to try to place them here on the back and use some hot glue, a generous amount here, to attach my little reindeer's antlers. Now for the eyes, I just have a couple small black beads. I think these came off of actually a little bracelet that had broke a while back, and I had just kept all the beads from it, but they are perfect for his little eyes. So I'm going to add these right here. It's a little bit of hot glue. And our little reindeer snow measuring stick is complete. I think this little guy, or I guess it would be girl, since females have the antlers in the winter. Our little female reindeer, she's adorable. I think she's so stinking cute. I think my kids will have fun with this winter measuring snow. Now, if you are going to use this to measure snow, you'll probably want to also add a sealer to this. I took mine outside and just added my spray matte sealer to it. Whatever you usually use to seal your projects with will be work. And here I just add it in just my little crock here to store it when I'm not measuring snow. For this next DIY, I'm going to be making a little snowman poke or pick. So to start off, I'm just going to draw a little pattern for a snowman. I'm going to start off just by drawing a basic star shape. This is going to serve as the body of our little snowman. And right here at the top, instead of a point, I'm just going to round it up to make a little head and give that a cutout. These don't have to be perfect, they're primitive, so we want them to have definitely a little bit of that human touch and element to them. Not perfectly symmetrical. So I'm going to go in once again with a piece of my canvas drop cloth here and fold it over, and I'm going to trace my pattern right onto the drop cloth. And I'm again going to flip these around so the top one that had where I had drawn my pattern is on the bottom. That way if any of that Sharpie is still showing, it is going to be hidden on the inside and you won't see it. And then I'm going to start using my hot glue to start gluing together my two pieces. Now, when I'm gluing this together, I'm going to go down on what would be the legs. I'm going to do the sides, but I'm going to leave the inside there open so that way I can add my stuffing. And I'm once again using my plastic bag, but you could use, like I said, once again, the polyfill stuffing or old pillow stuffing, just whatever you have on hand. Now, when I'm doing this, I'm not going to glue all the way to the top of the leg. I'm going to leave a small opening right in the center so that I can add my stick in to put this as a pick or a little poke. You could also, now if you don't want this, you just want to make like a dough bowl ornament or just a regular ornament, just go ahead and seal it the rest of the way up, because you could absolutely do that as well with these. Now I was going to use a stick from my yard again to put this on, but snow ruined my plans. So instead, I'm just going to take one of these dowel rods from Walmart and I'm going to give it a coat of the Waverly Antique Wax. So here you can see the little hole I left right in the center. And I'm going to add some glue in there, and I'm going to add my dowel rod right about halfway up my snowman. And then finish sealing this off around the dowel rod with hot glue. So we kind of have a little snowman wand is what it looks like right now. So for his scarf, I'm going to take a piece of this red and cream gingham homespun, just rip off a really thin strip, and that's going to be our little snowman scarf. I'm going to add a little bit of hot glue to the back of our snowman's neck here. I want that to stay put and not slide around. Since he doesn't have a very big neck, we're just going to put that there so that way we know his scarf doesn't move. Then I'm just going to tie it in the front and add another little small dab of hot glue underneath to finish securing that to make sure it stays put. My homespun had a few extra strings. I don't mind a little extra strings, but it was a little crazy there at the end. Now for the nose, I'm going to take this orange pipe cleaner. This is just an orange pipe cleaner out of the packs you can get from Dollar Tree. And I'm just going to bend it over right here at the tip just to make what look like a small carrot nose. And it's a pretty bright orange, and this is going to be a little primitive snowman. So I'm just going to take my Waverly Antique Wax and very lightly dry brush over that orange. It's just going to dull down that orange just a little bit. Then I'm going to just snip that off and then hot glue it right onto my little snowman. That's going to be his little carrot nose. Now for his eyes and buttons, I'm just going to take some of my black chalk paint in the color of ink, and I'm just using the tip of my paintbrush here. I'm just going to dip it in the paint, and I'm going to dot him on a couple of eyes and 3 little coal buttons right down the front. You could add a little mouth too. I didn't on mine. There wasn't a whole lot of space there between his little scarf and his nose, and I thought he looked cute with that one, so I just left the mouth off on this one. Now I'm going to go in with my Waverly Antique Wax, and I'm just going to lightly dry brush just to give a little bit of grunting, a little bit distressing to our little snowman. If that's not your thing, you could absolutely just skip this part. And to finish him off, I'm just going to take one of these really small rusty bells, and I'm going to just hot glue it right to the center of his little scarf, right where the tie is, right where it tied. And here he is. I think he's so cute. Just pop him down into a little arrangement or in a tree, wherever you would need him. Or if you didn't want to do that, like I said, just you could use him as a dough bowl filler or an ornament. Just leave the dowel rod off. For this last DIY, I'm going to be taking one of these wood rounds. This is about a 2.5-inch wood round. I get these off of Amazon, and I'm going to go into my little bead box here that I also get off of Amazon. I'm going to use one of these larger beads. We're going to be making a little grapevine angel here, and this is going to serve as the body and the head. So using my thinner jute twine, I'm just going to take a decently large piece here and cut it off and string it through the hole that's already in my wood round. They come with these pre-drilled holes, which is really nice. So I'm just going to put it there, tie it in a knot, and then take both of my strands, string it through my bead, and then I'm going to tie it in a knot at the top. So you can see it's going to be the little body and the head of our angel. And when I tie this in a knot here at the top, since this is a larger bead and the hole is a little wider, I'm going to tie it twice to make my knot a little thicker. That way it doesn't pop through that hole. I'm going to take my remaining string here and I'm just going to tie it in a knot, and I'm just going to make a little bit a hanger here for our little angel. That way I have a way to attach it or hang it to whatever it is I want to put my little angel in. And I'm just going to add a dab of hot glue to that little knot there, right where I trimmed off those longer tails, so that way it just makes sure that knot doesn't ever unravel on me. Now for the wings and body of my angel, I'm going to go in with some more of this grapevine. This is just like the grapevine I used on the little reindeer snow measure. I keep saying that funny. Snow measuring stick. And I'm just going to take a little bundle of this and tie it with the jute twine and wrap it around once again. Like I said, this is just the grapevine. You can buy it in rolls at any of the crafting stores, or like I said, I just kind of borrowed aka stole this off a little grapevine wreath I had that was kind of seen better days, and just to repurpose it. So once I have my bundle made, I'm going to hot glue it right here to the back of my wood round. That will be the wings of my little angel. Then for the body, I'm going to do the same thing with this grapevine, except I'm going to make a little bit of a larger bundle than I did with the wings. And instead of tying it off in the center, I'm going to tie it off at the top here. You just want to make sure you get these tied really down tight, wrap it a few good times around there. And since this is a little bit of a larger bundle than the others, I'm going to add a little bit of hot glue down in there as well, just to make sure any of those little grapevine sticks in the center don't slide around on me or slide out ever. And this stuff does make a little bit of a mess. And the top of mine here, I'm going to have to trim it up a little bit and adjust it because it's going to go on the back of my wood round. So I'm going to need it to be small enough to be able to fit on the back with the wings. So here's just where I was just adding a little bit of hot glue kind of down into that bundle to help secure some of those grapevine sticks that were in the center from ever moving around. I'm going to trim this down just a little bit more so that it will fit on the back here right underneath my wings onto my wood round. And I'm using a pretty generous amount of hot glue here on these. And you can trim up the wings or the skirt as you need to if you don't want it too scraggly. Now every angel needs a halo, so I'm going to go in with my rusty wire here, and I'm just going to kind of form a little circlet right around the top that's big enough to go right around the top of my bead. I'm just going to twist that wire around itself just to make a little circle. And then I'm going to cut off a longer stem and the back so that I can attach it to the top of my little angel's head here. So I'm going to put my little hanger string through the halo. And then the extra wire on the back of my halo, I'm just going to pop right down into the bead, right through the center, and add a little bit of hot glue onto the top and on the bottom and the back to secure that down. Adjust our little halo so that it's straight. Now I have these little rusty hearts. These are just like the rusty stars except in the heart shape. And I'm just going to take and add one of these right to the center of this wood round with some hot glue. Just watch that metal can heat up. And to finish this little angel off, I'm just going to tie a little small shoestring bow right out of my twine, and I'm going to hot glue it right over top of where that hole is in that wood round. And I didn't like the tails hanging down over the heart, so I'm going to trim those down kind of small so that way they don't get in the way of the heart. And here is how our little angel has turned out. I ended up adding mine to a little wreath I had in my entryway, and I absolutely adore how it looked so rustic and so sweet. So that is it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to drop down, hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, I hope you'll subscribe so you can craft with me again in the future. And until next time, God bless, Merry Christmas, and happy crafting.